According to the Western intelligence and their sources, Russia might suspend their offensive soon. And this most recent attack against the territory of Ukraine is just one of the confirmations to this statement. At the same time, Russians were barely able to capture half of Bakhmut, and now their assaults are almost at complete stall. And since most likely they will not be able to expand their invasion beyond this city, one of the logical things for them to do is to completely stop it. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And our first picture is from one of the patriots who wanted to order the toilet paper with Zelensky on it, but the seller sent him the same toilet paper, but instead of Zelensky, there was Putin. And in the comment section, the Z-Patriot said that my mood is ruined, this product is unusable, and the seller is a liar. And speaking more about Russia, recently some TV channels and radio stations have been hacked, and instead of their regular programs, these air raid sirens have been shown. Then we go to the border between Poland and Belarus, and as you can see, the Poland Border Patrol, they have been installing these anti-tank barricades. And in addition to that, according to the Ministry of Defense of Poland, the country has recently sent 10 more Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, which brings its total pledge of 14 tanks fully completed. But wait, there is more. According to the President of Poland, Andrzej Duda, the country is ready to give to Ukraine all of its remaining MiG planes, and just for comparison reason, they have 23 of them right now in service, and 6 of them are being used for practice. Alright, now let's really quick go to the country of Georgia, where there are protests against this foreign agents bill are going for the 3rd day straight. And as of recently, all the demands of the protesters, which is to cancel this bill and to free all the political detainees, were fulfilled by the government. Which should be a great and extremely inspirational example to the people of Russia, is that you can achieve things by actually protesting. And as of recently, the people of Georgia issued another ultimatum, is that the government must resign. Alright, next, let's briefly talk about another controversial news, is that allegedly a Ukrainian quote-unquote diversion group has entered the region of Kursk and they started threatening Russia. The Russian propaganda immediately claimed that yes, these are Ukrainians who know it 100%. I'm not sure how, but this is what they said. And basically those group or 4 people, they said that they will be destabilizing the situation in the region. And I mean, if you think about this diversion/reconnaissance group, which is supposed to be technically very secretive, and right here we have them revealing their exact numbers, exact location, what they're going to do, when and where they're going to do it. So yeah, it kinda does not seem real. But, I mean, let's do a test here. If you also do not think that these are Ukrainians, let's all together like this video and subscribe to my channel, so I can see how many like-minded people are right here. You can also follow my second channel, The Russian Dude Clips, where I post under 1-minute summaries every single day. The links will be down below. Alright, and by the way, speaking about these diversion groups, if you remember recently in Bryansk region, there was a group of Russians who did acknowledge that there were Russians who did something similar. And so, in response to that, Russia said that they will revenge, and they will do it as they always do it, by massively attacking the territory of Ukraine, including the civilian objects. And our first video comes to us from the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, where Russians attacked the thermal power plant. And also later on, one of the missiles landed in a civilian neighborhood. And according to the mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, as a result of this emergency they had to shut down the power services, which affected approximately 15% of the residents. Next we go to Kharkiv, and as you can see from this video, the locals were able to see a huge crater as a result of the impact. Going more to the south, to the city of Enerhodar and specifically Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, as a result of these attacks, the power supply to the station has been temporarily shut down, but later it has been restored. And ultimately, all the way to the west, a Russian missile has severely damaged a civilian neighborhood in Lviv. This map, which you can see on your screens right now, shows all the reported impact sites across Ukraine. And a total number of 18 out of 20 largest Ukrainian cities have been affected. The Russian army was primarily targeting the energy infrastructure and civilian objects, and these launches have been happening from the sea, from the air, and from the land. But because Russia was using previously uncommon missiles, such as for example Kinjal, the Ukrainian air defense unfortunately was not that successful, intercepting a total of 34 missiles and 4 drones out of a total number of 81 missiles. But pretty much yes, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, this was the response for the terroristic acts of Ukrainians in Bryansk region, even though once again those people acknowledged that they were Russians, and the Ministry of Defense said that the targets were only military targets. And besides, as they mentioned, destroying every single military target, believe it or not, this is what they literally said, they were also able to disrupt the logistics of Ukrainians. But what they intentionally forgot to mention is that this attack alone costed them approximately anywhere between 400 and almost $600 million, while the average pension in Russia remains approximately $250 per month. And by the way, all the full footage from today's episode will be available on my Patreon, so just take advantage of this 1 week of free access if you want to try it for yourself. The link is down below. But to be honest, what does this massive attack tell you? Well, knowing that the Russian army is getting critically low on its supplies, so that they are forced to use uncommon missiles such as Kinjal, and at the same time just this general stalemate in the east with the exhaustion of the Russian forces and the depleting morale, this basically tells you that this massive attack was just another attempt of Russians to have its final word in this argument. They simply understand that their army cannot do much anymore, including in their most promising city for them, which is Bakhmut. And by the way, yes, we will talk more about this in details very soon. The Russian authorities also understand that the time is on Ukraine's side, and whenever these Western tanks, military equipment, and most likely even planes start fully arriving into Ukraine, this will be the beginning of the end of this Russian invasion. And so, what did the Russian army decide to do? Well, it is something they have been relatively successful at doing since the beginning of this war, which is just to do another mass attack against the entire Ukraine, including civilian objects. They are hoping to destroy the morale of Ukrainians and just in general their way of living, but in return it does feel like just a desperate move from the Russian side. Alright, and before fully switching our attention to Bakhmut and the possibility of Russians suspending their offensive operations, let me give you a brief update from the south before going to the east. And first of all, according to the Vice Prime Minister of Russia, yep, I mean, there are other politicians beside President. But okay, according to another Vice President of Russia, Marat Husnulin, he said that the railroad section of Crimean Bridge has been reinstalled. And I mean, looks like that starting from today, Russians have to be extremely careful smoking on that bridge. Next we have the report by the Institute for the Study of War, which claims that Ukrainians have been crossing Dnipro River for 3 days straight, and they have been landing on these islands. And to be honest, while the whole attention of Russians is on the east, it might be a good idea to disrupt it by attacking somewhere else. Alright, next we have a satellite image which shows the Russian air base in Berdyansk, and what makes this specific satellite picture so unique is that it was taken by a satellite which was bought using donations of regular Ukrainian people. And because of this, the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine was able to reveal the locations of hundreds of Russian military vehicles and to even destroy some of them. Next we go all the way to the east, where according to the same report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continued their offensive along Kupiansk, Svatove, Kreminna front line. And then, according to Ukrainian sources, thanks to their artillery, they are able to destroy an assault group of Russians to the east of Spirne. Some intense combat activity in the last 24 hours have been reported in between Fedorivka and Rozdolivka. And then according to the Russian side, specifically according to Yevgeny Prigozhin, Russians were able to fully capture Dubovo-Vasilievka, which is not yet reflected by this map. Next we go to Bakhmut itself, where Russians continue their assaults to the northwest of this city, and also they tried attacking from the south, but specifically these assaults have been completely repelled by Ukrainians. And in addition to that, Ukrainians, once again using the artillery, were able to destroy an assault group of Russians to the east of Bakhmut. And ultimately, Ukrainians were able to destroy a Russian military convoy which has been spotted in Vodyane. I even have this intercepted phone call, which potentially speaks exactly about this incident, because the Russian soldiers said that 7 armored personnel carriers have been completely eliminated by Ukrainians in a single attack. And as always, the full version of this conversation is on my Patreon, and the link is down below. And this is where things get more interesting. If we once again go back to Bakhmut and take a look at this map which shows us the changes in territorial control, exactly, there are no changes in territorial control in the last 24 hours, and besides that, a couple of red arrows which shows the directions of Russians' attack in the east are now gone. As for now, it is reported that Russians were able to capture approximately 50% of Bakhmut, but in the last several days, the pace of their advancement has decreased significantly. All the way until that point, when in the last 2 days, they were not able to capture any territory at all. Russians also tried to approach this city from different areas, such as for example south or southwest or even northwest, but all these attempts were also not that successful. And if you remember, this is exactly what I was talking about in the last of my several episodes, is that as soon as Russians reach Bakhmutivka river, this is when they will have significant difficulties advancing past it. The Western intelligence is also pretty certain that Russians will not be able to expand their invasion beyond this area. Because, the majority of experienced soldiers are already wasted by the Russian army in these crazy and insane attacks that they were doing in the past. Then the Institute for the Study of War even makes these claims, is that in case Russia is successful at capturing Bakhmut, most likely this will be their culminating point. And they also refer pretty much to the same statements, is that Russia does not have the capacity and resources, what is even more importantly human resources, to expand this invasion. They even claim that it was Wagner soldiers who were able to relatively achieve some sort of success, but then as soon as Ministry of Defense of Russia started to reduce the influence of Prigozhin by not supplying ammunition to his soldiers, this is when basically Russia shot itself in the foot. And it's not something bad. Do not interrupt your enemy whenever it's doing something stupid, right? And so yes, the Russian army has been wasting their more experienced soldiers by sending them in these waves of attacks. And guess what? Who are going to replace them? That's right, this will be the fresh conscripts and inexperienced recruits. But then it gets even worse. What do you think the Russia will do with these people? Most likely, they'll just continue sending them on the front lines and say, take this, achieve this mission, no matter the cost. And whenever even newer conscripts, which will follow after them, will see that their comrades were lost in this war without being able to achieve anything, what do you think will be the morale of these people? And because of this and many other reasons, Ukrainians realized that the defense, the battle for Bakhmut, might actually be more beneficial for them. Because it allows them to deplete the Russian forces at an extremely high rate, while only allowing them to advance a little bit, and in the last several days they are not even advancing at all. And as a result of this, whenever the Russian army uses the majority of its able-bodied current soldiers, this is exactly the time when Ukrainians will receive the majority of the Western military vehicles. And then this is when the Ukraine's final liberation liberating counteroffensive will begin. And if you don't want to miss it with me, just please subscribe to my channel, it only takes one click. And if you want to support my work financially, please consider becoming my channel member, use the PayPal link or become my Patreon. You can find all the assets linked to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.